Okay, so I want to talk to you guys about human rights. I know this is not something that you guys are used to looking at or hearing about, but I wanted you to get a little overview of the issue before I send you out to look at a bunch of websites and to watch some videos. I wanted to hear, I want you to hear what I have to say about it. So I'm just going to leave this in the mode that it is, and I know that all of you will get this as published. It'll be underneath the video in Moodle, so you can look at this too. All right, so an overview. Human rights is something that when you ask people to define it, it's really hard. It's one of those things that they go, well, it's whatever humans should have. But when you ask them to define what those things are, it becomes really, really difficult because people want to argue what those basic rights should be. The United Nations, who is the governing body, for this issue at least, is the one that's the watchdog, has set out a thing called the Human Declaration of Rights, and in that they set out 30 different rights that people have. And that document, it sounds great and people agree with it, but it only has force if the United Nations chooses to enforce that. And it's really difficult for the United Nations to be able to do that. There are a lot of people that are, violating human rights on a small level. So the United Nations can't worry about every single village everywhere in the world. They have to look at big things, so they're looking at big violations, which is really sad because there are thousands upon thousands of people that are having their human rights violated in small villages. And it doesn't have to be far away. It doesn't have to be way out there in random places of Africa or Asia or, some backwoods part of, I don't know where, but it can happen in big cities here in the United States. It can happen in small towns. It can happen to you and I. We have to worry about human rights because it's an issue that all of us are going to deal with. It's something that you see and you don't even realize that human rights are being violated. A lot of us don't think of it that way. But when you violate someone's rights to food and shelter, or you don't allow them to find help for those things, even here in Arkansas, we have people that starve to death and we don't provide food for them. So at that point, their human rights are being violated. We also have huge problems with the trade in humans. The United States has a huge corridor, the I-90 corridor and the I-40 corridor, huge trading routes for humans. Shipment of human beings from one place to another so that they can be bought and sold. And I mean slaves. I'm not talking, like, oh, well, these people have really low wage jobs and their job sucks. I mean, they're slaves. And it's usually children. A lot of them are kids that are being sold. And I know that you guys are looking, at yourself and thinking, I'm, huge and they're not going to want to take me. They want some little kid. Actually, you're the prime target age. They want kids between 8 and 16, and that's the prime target for the human traffickers. It's something that, as a kid, you need to know that's there, and you need to be wary of that. And especially as you guys get onto the internet and talk to your friends or people that you think are your friends. Just a thought coming from the teacher that used to teach tech. But I want you to realize that I-40, the Interstate 40 and Interstate 90, those are huge areas. And the U.S. works really hard to keep those down, but these people are working under the radar, and it's big business with lots of money. We also have to worry about limiting of rights because there are places that we limit people's rights where we tell them you have to have a certain thing to live here, you must be a certain group to live here, you must, whatever that is, we limit their rights. And limiting rights does limit their human rights. We have definite examples of that in the United States. We have definite examples of that all over the world. If you think of places in the Middle East where women are not allowed to be educated, that's a limit of their human rights. Where you see people in China that are limited on what they can say, their basic, right to have a lawyer present or have some kind of law that dictates what should happen to them other than just the whim of a government or the whim of a person in some places. I know that some of you have come from Latin American countries, And there are issues down there that have a lot of people worried when they look at human rights, because it becomes an issue of whoever has the most military might and the most money is the one that controls the area. And I think we have to look at that and realize that when we try to talk about human rights, it becomes an issue of dealing with those dangerous people. And it stops a lot of people from doing something about human rights, because you have to have an army, you have to have enough force to do it. And it becomes very, very difficult for anyone to get anything done. Now, that's not to say that there aren't people that are doing it. There are groups that watch out for human rights. They're country specific, they're world specific. Here's just a couple, and the links actually go to their website. This is an incomplete list of human rights organizations. But it's one of those things that, again, these people are trying to work through the legal channels to get things fixed. The groups that are violating human rights are not in the legal system, if you will. They're working on the outsides of it, the skirts of it, the edges of law. So the Center for Human Rights and Humanitarian Law, Amnesty International, UN Watch, that's the United Nations, UNICEF works with children mostly. These groups are there, and they want, if you go to their websites, most of them want money, and I'm not promoting donating to them in any way. It's just I'm giving you a list of who's out there. If you go to Wikipedia and look up, human rights organizations, you can find that there are like 300 of them around the world in every language. If you go out and look on the web and you just type in human rights organizations, you'll come up with 50,000 on a Google search. There are tons of organizations out there. So then one has to ask, so if there are tons of organizations out there that are working on this, why is it still here? Well, because a lot of people don't know it exists. If you don't know something exists, you can't help stop it. So as always with social studies, I want you to be an educated person and realize that these issues are there. And I want you to know that if you speak out about something, if you made your voice heard, if you start realizing that the issue is there, that it makes it harder for these people in the long run to continue their illegal activities, to continue to harm other humans. So why is it important? Well, there's a lot of things in this issue. There's the way children are treated, which is one of the ones for me that's important. I look at that being a school teacher and think, oh my goodness, those little boys are carrying, 50 pounds of bricks on their head, and they're going to have to walk a really long way to take these bricks wherever they belong. Or perhaps you can look at this image and see that the kids are living in less than great conditions, and they're probably not being fed on a regular basis. Or groups of people that are being forced marched by people with guns telling them where they have to go. Or a mother who loses her child as a result of a group of people taking him and forcing him into the army. I really want people to understand that there's an issue here. And when I listen to people talk and they say, well, here in the United States, we don't have these problems. Yeah, we do. And if we don't know about it, we can't stop it. And you guys need to think that when you speak to one another, when you are unkind to one another, when you do the things that you do on the internet that you should not, to one another, Facebook posts or, Snapchats, you need to really think about that, because it starts really small. And as you get more away from what you should and shouldn't do, or as you get more away from what you should do, these things become bigger. And I think you guys need to start with your own little bubble. You can't impact the world until you change what's around you. So if you change yours, your life, your friends, your group, and then you start working out, it should help. And that's where I want to start. I want to start small. I want to start with each one of you. And I want you to think, do I want to add to the problem, or do I want to stop it? To stop this problem, you need to change how you think of things. Think before. Think before you act. Think, do I want to do this? Am I going to hurt someone by what I say or do? It's very simple. Would you want somebody to do it to you? If not, don't do it. Golden rule, right? So the easiest things, start small, be aware it's out there, think before you affect the world and the people around you, and tell others about the issue. If we know it's there, it's hard to hide. I truly believe that human rights is something that all of us need to think about. We can make the world a better place by small steps. You guys are really, really smart. Maybe you can come up with something that'll make a huge change in the world. I'm asking you to think about it. When you watch the videos that come after this, when you look at the websites, when you answer the questions, think. Think hard. Look at all the things. Look at all the information. Listen to it. Ponder it. Decide if there's any way that you can make a difference. I think that human rights is something we look at and think it's so big. But if we start in our own worlds, with our own ways, maybe we can start a change. And I want you to think of that when you're looking at the human rights things.